Hello and welcome everyone back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Treneisha Williams, licensed professional counselor, and we have Miss Treneisha Hill, attorney. I want to give people just a few minutes to jump on. So, Treneisha, if you have your phone or anything, you can go ahead and share. I like to
Will do.
um, give people a minute. Let us know where you're watching from. If you are watching, hashtag live if you're watching us live, and hashtag replay if you are watching the replay. I like to make sure we're actually broadcasting. Yes, there we are. Okay. You can put it on your page or anything like that. Okay. So, see, we got a couple people watching us. Let us know who's watching, where we're watching from. Come on in, share the video if you're watching. And can I just say thank you so much for joining? I know you have
Absolutely.
a very busy life, and you bring in life. So yeah, you have a lot
Absolutely.
going on. So I appreciate you taking time to be here with me. I keep telling everybody I'm on this mission. We're going to work through tearing down the stigma of dealing with our mental health. And I really want to bring people, my goal is for people to be able to see um, success, however they deem that, but also to say, hey, success doesn't mean that we live life without any issues. We still have to overcome things, and so I just wanted
Absolutely.
to bring a lot of different people, a lot of different viewpoints and kind of professions together and talk about how they navigate through life successfully while figuring out how to deal with their mental health. Hey, Santrisa, welcome. Thank you for watching. Hashtag um, you already hashtag live. I want you to let us know who you can share this with, share this video, share, and we're going to get started. So I have Miss Treneisha Hill here, the gorgeous. Listen, every time I see a picture of you, honey, I'm serious. I'm like, that chick is gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet
You're
and just
so,
as beautiful.
so beautiful. But I also know you are not only beautiful, you are a true boss. So tell us a little bit about what you do. I know you recently shifted career, or not careers, but like where you were working. So what are you currently doing?
Yes. So I'm actually going through, I would call it a transition phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure we're going to touch on it because the topic is mental health and, high demanding careers. But I just shifted from a job as a full-time prosecutor. I was a special prosecutor for Caddo Parish here in Louisiana. And at the time, my current assignment it was kind of doing a hybrid type of role, if you will. So I was working in the appellate section, and I was also handling special prosecution. And typically, as a special prosecutor in our office, I dealt with the rapes, I dealt with the murders, I dealt
Mm,
with the high profile cases. And just, I guess, specifically, I'd say the sexual assault cases that I would handle would be sexual assault cases, which would likely be to the highest level, which would involve children. For instance, the last case that I prosecuted, my victim was only 7 years old. And so it's those type of matters that I would handle. And I'd grown accustomed to dealing with them. And, as we would all expect, sometimes it takes a toll on you. And you get to the point you're like, listen, this is a lot.
that's a whole lot. That's a whole lot. You'll have to hear on a daily basis and have to deal with that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So before we even get too deep into all of that, tell us more about just you as a person. Who is Treneisha?
Okay. So, for the most part, I think one of my favorite things to do, if I had to say, oh, if there's something I would love to do and didn't want to give up, one of my favorite things to do is to travel. So my husband and I, I say try. Keep in mind that we are almost 3 children in at this point, but we try to travel as often as we can. And I think for me, that gives me the opportunity to get away from reality, to almost have this I would say escape mechanism. When we travel, we book a location that we've usually never been to. And we try to go without an itinerary or an agenda,
Mm.
and it's crazy because I tell them, I say, we live our lives on an agenda. We're always on a schedule. There's always a deadline that we're trying to meet. I don't want a vacation like that. I don't want to
Yeah.
go and, so it helps me. And I had to realize probably it took a long time. I would say probably in the 6th or 7th year of my career, I started to realize like, hey, you are going to have to be intentional with
Hmm.
putting in any kind of mechanism that you need to implement to keep your sanity, because it
Hmm.
just it sometimes it can become overwhelming, and I definitely got to that point. And so one of the things I like to do most is I like to travel. But I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for, let's see, almost 12 years at this point. I have been a full-time prosecutor for the majority of that time period. So almost 11 years as a prosecutor. And this new venture, I say venture, because I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm now getting the opportunity to work side by side with my husband. So my husband
Ooh.
has, I know, right? My husband has always been a defense attorney while I was a prosecutor. And it would be funny because people
You
would
don't
say,
have to ask. Did you guys have to ever go against each other,
oh,
or?
no, no, you can't do that. That would be
Okay, well,
considered a
that's good.
conflict of interest.
That's good.
So we never had the opportunity to, but I joke and I would tell him all the time, listen, you wouldn't want to take a public loss. So, and so it was always really fun, but I've now kind of shifted gears and I'm working with him full time. And
Mm.
so I'm excited about it, but I'm almost learning a different perspective and a different side
Mhm.
of the legal system that, although I've been there as long as I have, you, when you start dealing with people from different levels, you get exposed to
Mhm.
other perspectives, and I appreciate it, and I'm thankful to God for giving me that opportunity to do so, because you can help people on both sides, and so I'm learning that, and like I said, I'm excited. It's exciting.
So, being on the side of the prosecution,
Mhm.
you're trying to convince someone to lock them up, right? Did that you the way you interacted in your personal life? Like, did you find yourself being more, I don't know if critical would be the word, or skeptical when you interact with people in your personal life, or were you able to keep that separate?
So I would agree. I was always I would say I think skepticism is that's a good description.
Mhm.
I would always just kind of be not so trusting. I wasn't very trusting of people when I first met them.
Mhm.
Um, I would almost make them prove to me that they were a good person. And
Mhm.
you learn later down the road that that's tiring. That's really tiring. But I also appreciate it from the aspect of it makes it a little harder for people to get one over on you, but
Mhm.
it also sometimes it also prevents you from being as compassionate as you could be, because there are certain
Mhm.
instances and circumstances where people just don't make the decision that you and I would have made. So that doesn't mean that we don't give them grace, just
Right,
because they're
right.
different or just because they don't think the same way we think. And so I had to learn, okay, well, listen, it's okay. People are different. People make different choices, but you still have to take the person as they are, and you still have to give them a chance. You have to get to know them. So I
Mhm.
will say for sure that probably spilled over into my personal interaction with people.
I'm sure that would be hard not to,
Yeah.
because you could do anything,
Yeah.
based on what
Yeah.
you hear. And you said the cases that you were having to try were such high level, ugly SUV type of stuff. It just,
Yeah.
it
The
just
stuff
seems
that
like
you
that.
didn't really want to, be exposed to or have to deal with or encounter on a daily basis. And so it does make you, you know, um, more concerning. Like, for instance, I told you I'm a mom.
Mm,
There were things that I would not allow my children to do that other moms probably never thought, oh, what's the harm in that? And I realized that that was because of the nature of the job that I
Mm,
was doing. And so, I understand it. It certainly spills over into personal life and personal
yeah.
choices.
So how did you or do you protect your mindset from being just like, we're gonna stay in this corner, we're not going out? how,
Yeah.
how did you stay sane during those really difficult cases?
Well, I'll say this. Everybody won't understand, but the people that get it, they will. I prayed a lot, Nitra.
Mhm,
I prayed a whole lot. And I always felt like, being a prosecutor, I've always wanted to be a prosecutor, which is an interesting thing.
mhm,
I had never been exposed to any attorneys growing up. I come from a law enforcement family, my parents, my uncles, my cousins, they're all in
mhm,
law enforcement, but there weren't any lawyers. So I knew that I knew I always wanted to be a prosecutor because I always wanted to be on that side to feel like I was helping people
mhm,
in some capacity. And so when I got the opportunity, the way it worked out, it just seemed as if it was God, orchestrating it to work out in that particular fashion. Um, and so for that reason, I was always very grateful. I was always very grateful to have that role and grateful that someone would entrust me to do
mhm,
such a big job and a heavy job. And so quite naturally, as I grew in the office and I got promoted to different levels, God and I we got on different levels, and I began to pray more and to just try to get in tune with the Holy Spirit and
mhm,
say, God, I don't know what I'm doing with this one. You are going to have to help me with this one. I'm not sure. And I noticed that when I would do that, it would help me a lot. And so it allowed me to compartmentalize. And I think once I was able to
mhm,
compartmentalize, I was able to do things and not even really think about it or think too hard about it.
mhm.
And then once it's over with and I think back, I'm like, girl, that was a lot. So it was helpful, but I would say for me personally, it was my relationship with God that allowed me to do it,
Mhm,
because if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have been as successful,
mhm.
nor could I have handled the cases, of the magnitude that we were handling. And that's the thing. I think having that experience, it made me aware of the people who do this. There are lots of prosecutors out there, and
Mhm,
people don't necessarily understand what we do or what we did. Um, when you hear someone talk about a prosecutor, the first thing they say is, "Oh, you send people to jail. You send people to jail." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I don't send anyone to jail. I make sure people are held accountable for what they did."
mhm,
Because what they don't understand is, although there's someone that often goes to jail, there's another side of the coin. There's a family that will never see their loved one again. There
mhm,
is a child that now has to go through life with whatever kind of trauma from sexual assault that they should have never had to experience. So
mhm.
for me, I viewed it as kind of helping people navigate through those traumatic experiences, because that's a lot of what I did.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask this. What are some of the challenges that you faced as an attorney? Not necessarily just like, oh, this specific case was hard, but just overall with this journey, what are some of those challenges and how did those challenges impact your mental health?
I think for me, I had to learn early on in my career that people are going to look at you and they're going to assume or believe or expect something about you that's likely not going to be true.
Mm,
I think for me, at first it was challenging because people would look at me a lot and they would underestimate my ability. They would feel like, well, she looks like she's young. Why are you doing this job? Or
mm,
who do you know? Or um, why should I trust you to, you know, help my loved ones secure justice. You don't
Yeah.
need to look like you know what you're doing, or you don't look like what I expected you to look like. And for me, I didn't understand. I'm like, why do we have so many emphasis and so much emphasis on what I look like and why I
Mhm.
look like if I'm supposed to be doing this? But then I realized soon after they would be like, oh my gosh, like once I kind of they saw me working, they'd be like, oh man, whoa, and so I realized that just because people will underestimate you, don't let that affect the way you work. Don't let that
Mhm.
ever affect your work ethic. Don't let that change who you are. It almost makes you feel like you're constantly having to prove yourself to people.
Mhm.
And I had to realize that, look, I'm not proving myself to anybody. You either are here, you either accept me as I am, or you keep it moving and we go our separate ways. But my hope is that you allow me to help you and
Mhm.
do whatever it is that, I've been entrusted to do to make this situation a bit better than we found it. So that was certainly one challenge that I honestly, I didn't understand it. I'm like, look,
Mhm.
I know I look a little younger than I guess my age, but I'm old enough to be here. I earned the right to be here, I worked
Yeah.
hard to get here. So I
So
know
I
that
want to stop and point out that gem you just dropped because
okay.
I don't want to go over anybody's head. When you're talking about protecting your mental health, a part of it is knowing, who you are and standing in that and
Yeah.
not feeling the need to try to, I don't know, prove yourself to
Conform
somebody,
or
or
yeah,
I have to be a certain way, because that does damage to the psyche. You're going, well,
absolutely.
I need to prove to them. No, I'm just going to do my job with excellence. But
Yes.
ultimately, if they're set on misunderstanding or not believing in your capabilities, that there's not much you can do except do your job, and
Right.
I think that's huge. A lot of people, we get caught up in, I have to show them, that we don't actually focus on our purpose, our our mission, our goal, and we get distracted, and then we go down this cycle, emotional cycle of, well, they don't believe in me, and you get all the hater talk and this talk and all of that, when reality it's, hey, you went in to say, hey, I have a case to try. I'm going
Right.
to do my job. And I think that's amazing. I see mostly women over here in the comment section. So I just want to say, as a woman, depending on what your career is, you may be in a position where people look at you a certain way. Oh, she's, as I said, even at the beginning, Treneisha's so pretty. Oh, she's pretty. Is she qualified? What, all of the assumptions that come with a woman in sometimes a male dominated space, or a more corporate space, or a legal space. So sometimes you have to navigate knowing that other people may make assumptions about you, but that
Yeah.
doesn't have to become your mission to prove them wrong, or to do any of those things. And I think Chandra said in the comments, just be. And I think that's
Yes.
it. You embodied, no, I'm just going to be.
Yeah. And I have to be honest, it took a
Mhm.
while for me to get there because when I
Absolutely.
first started, I was a 25-year-old prosecutor, 25-year-old lawyer. I had no clue what I was doing.
Mm.
And so sometimes you have to be careful because I still talk to some of my friends who still do, who are working in this field just in general, not
Mhm.
necessarily just prosecution, who are an attorney. And one of the things that we realize is that, if you feed into what it is people are saying about you and the things that they think, you start to wonder. It's almost like
Mm.
imposter syndrome sneaks up on you and you're like, am I really qualified to be here? And it's almost like you forget, all the hours, all the hard work,
Mhm.
all the dedication, all the discipline, all the sacrifices that
Right.
you put into actually getting that moment. You allow other people to get in your head and make you think that you're not qualified when you were called to do what you're doing, or else you wouldn't be doing it. So we
Yeah.
have to be careful and be mindful of that. But that's very true. And like I say, I don't think I started off as confident in knowing that, hey, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
This is a part of my purpose. I think initially, and that's probably why it was so challenging for me at first, because it was bothersome. You're like,
Yeah.
well, what is it about me that makes you think, that I shouldn't be here? Like, you don't know
Mhm.
how hard I work. You don't know what I had to go through and what I had to overcome. But I'm happy to say that, now I know how to deal with that, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. And like I said, you either take it or leave it. It is what it is. I'm here.
Yeah. And honestly, especially a career like becoming an attorney, they don't pass those degrees out. You know,
No.
they don't just go, oh, she's nice. She comes from a good family. Let's give her one. So to know, in order to even be able to be in that space, you did have to put in the work, the sacrifices, and so being able to own that. And I think that's with everybody on here, being able to say, I know I belong in this space. I've done this work. I've committed to being excellent at my craft. And I think that's really important. Now, you mentioned being a 25-year-old prosecutor. To me, I'm like, oh, that's really young. That's a huge responsibility, all of that stuff. How did you, or what mindsets did you have to kind of overcome to even be able to reach that level of success and still be able to kind of stand in your sense of self?
Mm. For me, I think one of the biggest things was I had to be very, very disciplined. But that wasn't as difficult because remember, I told you I came from a law enforcement family, right?
Mm.
And so I used to think, they are so strict. Like, oh my gosh, lighten up. It was just like little things here and there, oh, well, you guys aren't going to sleepovers, or we're not doing this, or we're
Mm.
not doing that. And honestly, at the time, I didn't get it. I just felt like they were so strict, but I assumed that it was for our good. And so for that reason, I tried my best to do what it was I was either instructed to do or what I knew I had to do to get to the next level or to get to whatever it is that I was trying to accomplish. So I will honestly say that I sacrificed a good bit.
Mm.
I went to college and enjoyed college, but I um, probably didn't party or enjoy college as much as I could have, because there were times there were times where, here I am, I may not want to, you know, um, be studying, and my sorority is having a party, but guess what? You have a test tomorrow. So you
Mm.
probably can't go. Or if you go, you can't stay the entire time. You need to come back early or whatever the case may be. So I learned early on, and I think that was a part of my mindset, that there are certain things that you have to do to accomplish
Mm.
whatever goal it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so for me, I think discipline has been a big part, because there are times where we just don't feel like it and we don't want to do things, but then well, guess what? That's just what I have to do to accomplish what it is that I'm trying
Yeah.
to achieve. And so in my family, I was not the first college graduate. I wasn't even the first person to, have a doctorate, but
Hmm.
I was the first lawyer. So I didn't know I didn't know exactly what I had to do to become a lawyer. I just knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, and I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I don't have a story, like most. So, oh, I watched such and such on TV. I don't have that. Um, it's just, I think it's something that God just kind of um, blessed me with, like a desire that He placed
Yeah.
inside of me that it's not my own, I promise. It was just a desire that He placed inside of me from early on. And early on, I was just like, I want to be a lawyer. And I didn't even really know what lawyers did, So that's how I
Wow.
know. That's how I know it was, divinely orchestrated. But yes, discipline.
So you talk about discipline, and that word, at least in my circle, has been buzzing around for all week. All week, all I've been hearing about is discipline. My pastor did ed talk. It was about discipline yesterday. Bible study was about
Yeah,
discipline. So
yeah.
clearly, discipline is like the word either just for me or for a lot of people. What do you say to someone who says, I struggle with discipline and I don't have that discipline? What feedback would you give to help them to develop that?
Keep trying. Keep trying. That's it. Because the thing is, before you can learn to be disciplined in something, you have to at least make an effort to change
Mhm.
whatever it is that you're doing. You have to make an effort to change the behavior. So let's say I'm going to give up sodas, right? Well, in order for me to give up sodas, I have to stop drinking the soda. So, so if I slip up and say, hey, it's a rough day, I really need a soda. Okay, well, you slipped up and you had a rough day, but guess what? Tomorrow's a new day. So you need to try again. I'm going to give up sodas. And then tomorrow I'm going to try to give up sodas. So I think with discipline, you don't just always wake up. There are some people that are just generally naturally disciplined people, most of us are not. And so with discipline, I think the biggest thing is you have to keep trying. You have to keep making an effort. You have to be intentional about it. You
Mhm.
have to not put yourself in situations that will cause you to not be disciplined, which if you think about it in and of itself, that's a form of discipline,
Yeah.
being careful where you place yourself, being careful what you allow yourself to be around, what allow
Mhm.
yourself to hear, who you allow yourself to interact with. So just keep trying,
Yeah.
and that's all we can do. We get it wrong, we keep trying, we try again. And after a while, it's like a muscle. You learn to just be disciplined in your ways.
Yeah.
And
That's
it
good.
just, yeah.
No, one of the things that Pastor Strickland talked about yesterday in his was it yesterday? 2 days ago, Tuesday. In his ed talk, he was saying
I need to go
discipline is a
back and watch.
skill. It's good. It's really good. But he was saying that discipline is a skill, and so like you were saying, you keep trying. We don't develop any skill without continuing to do it over and over again. And I think that's just really super important. You mentioned about your mom and doing things a little differently. I want to know how you navigate being the bomb prosecutor now on the defense team, but attorney, with being a mom and having that, because some people, their job is just literally work, 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 and they don't
Mhm,
have a lot of time for family. And
mhm.
how do you navigate those roles?
So for me, I had to learn to set a boundary, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's crazy because I notice it, I guess really not even just in career, in life in general, you're always learning, right? And so I had to realize that I'm a great attorney. I am, I would say, a pretty good wife. I wanted to be an even better mother. um,
Mm.
I always wanted my children, and I still want my children to feel like when we go out and people say, "Hey, that's Treneisha," or "Hey, oh, I've run into Miss Hill. I know her from this." I want them to take pride in that, but I want them to almost expect it because I want to be that much greater at being a mom.
Mm.
So for them, it comes as no surprise that someone would say something nice about their mother because they live with her every
That's who
day and
she
they
is.
know
Yeah.
who she is. And I think in order for me to do that, I have to intentionally focus on them. I have to pay attention to each and everything. And with them still kind of being young, my oldest just turned 7
Mm.
a few weeks ago, and my middle will be 5 in a couple months, and the new baby will be here in a couple months. But I always felt like I wanted them to never feel like they came second.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if that's going to change, I don't
Yeah.
know. I just didn't want them to feel like they came, well, let me say this. I don't want them to ever feel like they come second to my work, you know?
Mhm.
Now, to marriage, that's probably different.
Yeah.
But I never want them to feel like they come second to work, or that, mom isn't there, mom just would miss. And I know for me, right before my transition, one of the things that happened with my daughter, she was in kindergarten at the time, and I was prepping a double homicide. And she had this event going on at school. And so I was in court. I wasn't in trial yet. I was just kind of doing the preliminary hearings before the trial.
Mhm.
And I finished a little earlier than expected. And so what I did was I called my husband. I was like, "Hey, are you going to Noah's event?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be there in just a second. You want me to come pick you up?" And I'm like, "Sure." So he meets me, we get there, and when I walk in, she was so surprised to see me, but it was what her teacher said to me that it actually kind of bothered me, you know.
Mm,
She and her teacher was just as surprised to see me. They weren't surprised to see my husband there. They were surprised to see
mm,
mom there. And her teacher said, "Oh, she didn't know you were coming. She said mom had a long shift in court and that she wouldn't be able to make it." And for whatever reason, I can't even fully say, but it bothered
that
me.
was, yeah.
That messed with me. And I felt like, you know what? At this point, I've got to set a boundary. I have got to intentionally make time for them. I never want them to feel like, they come second or they don't come first. And I get it. I'm going to probably miss some things, but I don't want their first thought to be that, well, mom is too busy. Mom has a big case that she's
Mm,
working on. So I've started setting boundaries. I've started being a bit more intentional. And I think with this transition, I've gotten a lot more flexibility than
mhm,
I had in the past. And I just think in this phase of life with my children at the ages they are,
mhm.
I've got to make a sacrifice. I loved being a prosecutor. In fact, I thought I would be a prosecutor the whole time. But, God has certainly been revealing some things to me and showing me that, look, that's your plan. That wasn't a part of my plan. I didn't tell you that was the
Mhm.
way. You assumed that was the way.
Oh.
Right, right. And so it's been very refreshing. And I think the best way I would describe it in terms of being a mom, with a demanding job is you have got to put boundaries in place and you have got to keep those boundaries because
Mhm.
there are times I tell my husband, clients, other lawyers, people in general, they're going to call you and they're going to feel like whatever is going on for them is an emergent issue and you need to stop what you're doing right then
Right.
and there to address that issue. And I tell him all the time, I said, listen, an emergency in their life is not an emergency in mine. I don't
Mhm.
mind helping, but you've got to respect my boundaries. If I'm closed and if it's after office hours, don't call me. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, don't call me because that's my family time. That's the time I've set aside to be there for them. And just like you'd want me to be there for you, my children want me to be there for me. They need
Yeah.
me, if not more, they need me. And so for
Yeah.
that reason, I have to be there for them.
So I was actually about to ask you, what did those boundaries look like? And you began to share. Are there any other places where it feels like this was a boundary I had to set besides I'm only going to work during, when I'm done, I'm done. What other boundaries did you establish?
Hmm. Um, I think in my marriage too, seriously,
Mm,
because with both of us being in the same field, we're both attorneys. We both talk, about our days, right? And so you talk about things that you experience throughout the day that was like, listen, you are not going to believe this.
right.
But we made a boundary where, look, after a certain time, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't, because we're
You
so
have
much more
to
than
turn off
lawyers.
the legal talk at some point.
Exactly, exactly. That's just one aspect of my life.
Mhm.
I'm a regular person. And so my husband always says that I taught him that, people need to know that you're a regular person, which they do. Like, let's just be honest. Like, we're regular people with real lives. We deal with the same
Mhm.
things other people deal with on different levels, but we don't have to always be a lawyer
Mhm.
24/7, and I don't always want to talk like a lawyer, and I don't always want to anticipate what's going to happen in this hearing or what do you think. I don't really care right now. It's 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. Listen, it'll be there Monday, it'll be there Friday, or whatever the case may be. So I definitely will say for sure in my marriage, I had to make sure I separate work and marriage, which I think has only been beneficial and possibly the only way that we're able to work together. Because
Mm.
I
Yeah,
always
that makes sense.
I say, listen, I never envision working with my spouse because it's like, listen, I see you all day, every day. That means I'm gonna see you all day.
For real all day.
Like I like you, I love you, but dog, do I like you that? No, I was joking. But seriously, it
Yeah.
helped me having that boundary to separate work and personal life. You just have to have that because you don't want to be overwhelmed with whatever's going on in your day-to-day, work life and then bringing that home. that's a big no for me. That's not okay. So
Yeah.
we try not to, spill our
Hmm.
personal and work life. Try not to blend it. There are going to be times where it happens. I get that, but
Right.
you don't want to make a habit of doing that. And I think that's how you become overwhelmed, overall when you don't
Hmm.
set those boundaries.
So I have to know, you mentioned, I like you, I love you, but we're together a lot. Have you established your boundary for you time? Because now you really are with him a whole lot. So do you have a plan for, yeah, on Mondays, bye, I'm going to do this, or on this, this time, this is for Treneisha, not our marriage, not mommy, me.
Yeah. So being completely transparent, that is probably the area that I lack most.
Mm,
I don't think I do as well in that area. And I think that's almost just like almost a natural thing, because I think as moms and even as wives, we feel like we're always considering, what it is that our children are dealing with, what it is that our children need, what our husbands or our spouse needs, what it is that they're dealing with in that moment. You sometimes forget about yourself.
mm-hmm,
And I think some of the best bit of advice I was given a couple years ago, I know it's only a couple years ago, right? No, was you've got to put yourself first. Putting yourself first does not mean that you're selfish. Putting
mm-hmm,
yourself first means that you are maintaining the condition and the place you need to
mm-hmm.
be able to provide and be all those things for the people you
Yeah.
love most. So how is it that I can help you do this or help you do that, or how can I be this for you if I am just completely empty and worn out? And I'll be completely honest, um I I struggle with that. I'm better now than I was, say, a few years ago, but it's still something that if I'm not careful, I will forget to go and have some
Mm-hmm,
me time. I will forget to take care of myself. I always say I take much better care of my family than I
mm-hmm.
do of myself. And it probably should not be that way.
Yeah. So everybody, I want you to kind of remember and like put in a time. You almost have to schedule time
Yes.
for yourself. Treneisha said, I'll forget. Now think about this. Again, most of the people I see, at least on here, are women. And we do tend to do that. I forgot that I needed to do this. I forgot it's been 3 weeks since I went and did this thing for myself. And so if you don't schedule it, if you don't prepare your mind to think of it, it is really easy to slip. I see somebody over here saying they're guilty. Absolutely. It's easy for us to do. And so I would just encourage you, Treneisha, all of us, to be really mindful of that piece of, yeah, babe, I'm I'm going out. Whatever that going out means. I'm going to get coffee. I'm going for a walk. I may just go, people always talk about sitting in the car in the garage is self-care, maybe it's that piece, but figuring all of that out. Treneisha, tell me about any mental health issues you had to face and how did you deal with it?
Mm. So I think with that one, I would certainly say it would have to be compassion fatigue, right?
Mm,
Um, I never realized, I didn't realize that there was a such thing as secondary trauma, right? I didn't realize it. And now I'm aware of it and now I understand, but it took me talking to a therapist and saying, I don't know why I feel this way. And she's like, are you serious? That you just told me X, Y, and
yeah, you don't know why.
you don't know why. And I'm like, no. But seriously, I think I went through a period of just, I was so drained and so exhausted because, whenever you have certain jobs where you are always, listening and always
Mhm,
helping people deal with what is considered to be a problem for them, sometimes it's very difficult to compartmentalize and
mhm,
not to let that weigh on you in some kind of manner. And I think before I realized that, hey, I can't take on all the problems of the people that I meet and all the circumstances that I encounter. I've got to learn how to disconnect and distinguish between
Mm-hmm.
being there to help someone versus being there and feeling as though you're walking in their shoes. That's not your story. That you are not,
Mm, that is good.
there's a difference between being sympathetic and empathetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes we think it's oh well, it's cool to be empathetic. No, I try to stay away from it simply because being empathetic almost makes you put your mind in the place that their mind may be in that moment, and
Mm,
it can be dangerous. It can be very dangerous. So I think for me, one of the biggest things that I've battled with mentally is compassion fatigue, because I would be trying murder after murder after murder after
mm,
murder. And it's crazy because it's like you get to this place where you don't even realize that you are internalizing things the way you're
yeah.
internalizing them. Um, for instance, I will say it's been a few months now, almost a year, but I had this case that I was working on. And when I tell you I was working on this case day in and day out, I'd be at work dealing with something with this case. I'd come home. And even though I said I had those boundaries, right,
Mm,
I would still, when the kids would go to bed, I'd be like, okay, well,
mm-hmm.
this is some extra time. I can open my computer and I can do this or I can do that.
Right.
And I started to do that. And I did it without realizing, hey, you need to have a break. You need a
Mm-hmm.
moment to go and take care of Treneisha. You might need to go get a massage, go get your feet done, do
Mm-hmm.
something. I didn't do that. And so what I didn't realize is that I was almost internalizing all of the things that I expected this family to be going through. And for
Ooh.
that almost made me feel like I needed to work harder, like I didn't deserve a
Mm,
break, You need to work harder because you've got to get justice for this family. And that's true. And in some cases, that's a good motivator. But if you're not careful, that could be very, very detrimental.
yeah.
And it wasn't until after the case I realized I'll never forget it probably. There was one morning I was getting dressed for court, and my husband came in the bathroom, and whatever he said to me, I can't even tell you what he said. Um, Tears just all of a sudden start rolling down my face.
Mm,
And he was like, like,
yeah.
listen. No.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? I don't know what this is, but this is not your life. You have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that you can help people without immersing yourself so much to where
Mm-hmm.
you're just kind of, no, that's not your life. He's like, that's not your world. And it took that moment, because sometimes we have to be rough with the people that we
Yeah.
love and say, that's not okay. And I didn't realize that was going on until, you know, um, for that particular situation, until he pointed it out to me. And
Yeah.
so I think we have to be careful.
Yeah. I want people to put in their nuggets, because I think you did. You just dropped another nugget. So many times we embody, or we think we're doing a great job, but we get so focused on being successful at whatever that is. It's like, I have to get justice for this family. I have to do this. And we don't separate. No, this is still a job for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I still have to take care of myself. I
Yeah.
have to be able to, and you used the word earlier, compartmentalize these different aspects. And I see it sometimes even with people who are more in like corporate settings, where we have to hit these numbers, we have to do this, we have to, all of this, and go, this this isn't even your company.
Right. Right.
You're literally staying
Yeah.
up hours and hours, and this isn't your life, your. And so again, I do think we should operate with excellence, but I think what your husband did for you was really powerful, to step in and say, hey, I see you going down a path that isn't really healthy for you.
Yeah.
So kudos to both of you, and kudos to you for being able to hear that, because
Yeah.
sometimes we're so immersed in something that even when someone says it, we just get defensive and keep doing what we're doing.
That's true. That's true. I probably have been there before too.
Oh,
So
I'm sure we all have. Now, tell me, if you were talking to someone who says, hey, I want to be, um, an attorney, or just I want to have some position where I'm the mover, the shaker, all of those things. What advice would you give them if on how to kind of navigate being successful and maintaining healthy boundaries? Or not even just boundaries, just taking care of yourself.
I always go back to, of course, one of the scriptures, to whom much is given, much is most definitely required, right? And so we often think, we want all these major plans and we want to do these
Mm.
big things. And sometimes we forget that there is a lot of work that has to be put into it. And one of the reasons I actually appreciate you doing Minding My Mental Health is because I think platforms like this help address the stigma that there is out there with regard to mental health, because you hear people talking about, oh, well, um, you need to spend more time educating yourself here. You need to spend more time under a mentor here. You need to learn the skill here. But very rarely do you hear people say, well, what is your mindset like? What are you
Right.
thinking about? How do you feel mentally? And so I think one of the things that is possibly most most instrumental in whatever it is we decide to do is our mind, is our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, why would we not want to nurture the thing that we use most to achieve
That's the truth.
whatever it is
Yeah.
that we're trying to achieve? And so, that's why I say I appreciate you, kind of tackling this stigma that, oh, well, you'll be okay. Just pray about it. Just go to the church. Just talk to your pastor. You'll be fine. You don't have to worry about it. A therapist. What do you mean a therapist? Girl, are you crazy? And it's odd because I would say honestly, within probably the past 20 to 25 years, people have now started to actually put the necessary emphasis that they've needed to put on their mental health and their
Mm-hmm.
mindset. And so if I had to talk to someone who said, hey, I want to be an attorney, or I want to do something in corporate America, or I want to do a job that most people probably wouldn't want to do because of the stress,
Mm-hmm.
I would tell them, do you have a therapist? Do you have someone that you can
Mm-hmm.
talk to? Because what you have got to learn how to do is to compartmentalize. You've got to learn how to decompress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you've got to learn healthy ways to do those things, right? Because sometimes, and we were talking about this in another conversation, sometimes we will not think a whole lot about it, and we go and we will gravitate and get our favorite snack, or we like ice cream, we're going to go get ice cream because today was a rough day,
That's
and
my
so you
thing too.
gotta right. So you've got to figure out what those healthy
Mm-hmm.
practices are for you and what they look like. And so for anyone that's, aspiring to have any type of career to where it's going to require work and a high level of achievement,
Mm-hmm.
I would say you definitely want to make sure you have somewhere, even if it's not a therapist, do you have a support system? Do you have people that
Mm-hmm.
you can bounce ideas off of? Do you have people that you can say, what do you think about this? This is how I felt when this happened. Is that okay? Or what would you do? Or how would you
Yeah.
respond to this? So you've got to have that. You've got to have an outlet. That's really what it is. You need an outlet, a mental outlet at that.
No, I agree 100%. Now, I do agree too, like you said, mental outlet. I think we can, because we're whole beings, physical can help our mental. Working out can be a
Absolutely.
great mental outlet, but you do need to have somewhere where you can actually go and talk about and process the actual thoughts as well. I think guys do a really good job of doing it physically. I
Absolutely.
mean, I've seen guys, they have rough whatever, and they're like, oh, yeah, I just went to the gym, or I just went to the court and I played like a gazillion games, but now I feel fine.
Yeah.
Whereas as women, we don't always go to the physical as much as an outlet, but I think it's a really healthy outlet. But again, you don't want to just solely rely on, oh, yeah, I ran for 3 miles. Well, good, but you still have to work on what you're thinking as well. So I love that.
Absolutely. And I would agree with you there because you just reminded me early on, before I had kids, before I was married, that was one of my outlets. I would work out a lot after work.
Mm.
And it was almost like it just helps you release whatever it is that you might even be holding on to that you don't even know you're holding on to.
Mhm.
And so that was one of the ways I actually cared for myself. And so when I became a mom, I didn't have the same amount of time. And so I
Mhm.
wasn't, at the gym as much as I was whenever I wasn't a mom. And so I know I would say within the past 2.5 years, I've had to get myself back into that mindset of going as far as I actually have a trainer.
Mhm.
And I had to kind of remind myself, girl, you're paying this trainer, so you need to get up and go work out, So it was helpful for me though, because that helped me. And this
Mhm.
whole self-care thing, this whole mental health, taking care of yourself mentally, it's multifaceted. It really
Absolutely.
is. And so that was a big part of it. That physical, what is it that you're doing on a physical level to help
Mhm.
you kind of balance all these stressors that you're internalizing? You got to get that stuff out. And so
Mhm.
I agree with you there. Physical definitely plays a part.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's end on, what would you say is your greatest victory in your personal or professional life? What has been this moment where you stand back and you go, I'm really proud of these things or this thing?
Mm, that's a hard one. I would say, um, in my professional life, I would say the greatest victory is being able to step back and see how it is that you've impacted someone's life, because sometimes we really don't take it for what it is. We just think that we're doing a job and this is what we have to do. And we're doing this because this is a part of our obligations. But for other people, it means a lot. And you've almost changed your life in a way that you don't even realize. And I can think of numerous cases that I've dealt with, and people that I've met as a result of those cases, because I always say, I would encounter these people almost in like the worst of the worst situations, but we would all teach each other something. I was able to learn something from them, and
Yeah.
obviously they say they were able to learn something from me. So for me, that's probably one of the biggest accomplishments career-wise that I can say I'm proud of. I want people to always be able to learn from me, or to always be able to get something. I want to leave people better after they've met me than they were when we first encountered.
Mm.
I want them to feel like, man, there's something about her. There's something about her. Um, I think personally, oh, that's hard. And I think personally, I want my biggest accomplishment to be being the kind of wife and mother that my children and husband can say, man, like, I don't know how we live without her. I want
Mm.
to impact them in a way that they are just not just proud, to be connected to me, but thankful to God for, allowing me to be there, because I certainly thank God that, He's blessed me with them.
Mhm.
So I want them to feel the same way, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. You want them to have the same type of impact, or you want to have the same impact they've had on you, as far as just the gratitude of, like, I'm really thankful to have these little people, this big person, in my
Absolutely.
life, and when they look at you, to be just as proud and all of that good stuff, right? So
Absolutely.
no, I love it. I love it. I put on here any questions for Treneisha. I've enjoyed this conversation. Any
So
parting
have I. Thank you.
for you, for anybody who's saying, hey, I want that? Because I know a lot of people feel that success has to come with the grind, and it has to be all sacrifice, where it's like, I don't get to have fun. It's just, I sleep when I die, that kind of
Ooh.
that kind of
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah.
Any words for people of how to take care of themselves and still be able to excel at your career?
I think one of the biggest things that we have to do and we have to make a point of doing is being cognizant of what we need personally, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, I remember telling a friend of mine, you have got to take, and it's crazy because it's like I'm giving this advice out and I'm like, girl, you need to take your own advice.
Mm.
But I remember telling her, you've got to take better care of yourself. Because remember, at the end of the day, you will be your most trustworthy friend, your most reliable friend. You're going to always be there for yourself, right? And so, why is it that we put ourselves on the back burner? And sometimes we fail and we forget to do the essential things to take care of ourselves because we get so caught up in taking care of other people and meeting this deadline and trying to build this company and working on our businesses and oh well, I did this last year, I want to do this year. But we forget that, guess what? Before I can do any of these things, I've got to make sure that I'm taken care of. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when's the last time I went to the doctor? When is the last time
Mm-hmm.
I, stopped and took a breather? When is the last time I said, you know what? I'm not working today. I need a mental break. And it's crazy because we have been taught, in a sense, hey, it's grind, grind, grind. You've got to hustle,
Mm-hmm.
sleep is for the rich, this is and that. And that's crazy because that's some that's some crazy talk, right? We
Yeah.
know how important sleep is on our bodies. And so if you don't sleep, then guess what? You don't function. And
I
so
will.
seriously, it's crazy. So it's like we've got to change some of those things that we're being told, I guess, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
things that people are saying that sounds like, oh man, that sounds cool to say. But when you really think about it, it's like that makes no sense. Like what? So we've got to be mindful of those type of things. So I think the biggest thing I would say is kind of doing that self-check. Where are
Mm-hmm.
you today? What are you feeling like today? And before you can really assess how you're feeling, if you're not taking good care of yourself, then we could lose it all. So you've got to be mindful of
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. Do you have
Thank
any questions
you.
for me?
I don't have any questions, but again, I just want to thank you because, like I said, I think what you're doing is so very necessary. And I wish we would have, embraced this years ago.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we deal with trauma that we don't even have to deal with had we handled things a long time ago. But thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for shining a light on um, the necessity and the importance of us maintaining our mental health, because without our mind and our mental health, we really can't be. And
Mm-hmm.
think about it. That's how we talk to God. That's how we interact with the people we love. That's how we show up for
Mm-hmm.
everyone that's depending on us. And so what good does it do us to not take care of it?
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's mind blowing. Like, but yeah, we
Yeah,
really
I agree. I think so many people downplay the mindset and the state of the mental health. And
yes,
even as a prosecutor, I'm sure you realize this person was in a really bad state when they did this.
yes,
They were either
absolutely.
trauma in their own past and all of that. Now, doesn't mean they shouldn't be accountable. But again, seeing if we don't take care of it, we could end the other side of some really bad decisions when we don't take
Absolutely.
care of our mental health. So, again, thank you. I want to encourage everyone to join me next Thursday. Every Thursday, 12 o'clock Central Standard Time, we are doing Minding My Mental Health. Join us. I want you to join me. The page is Tenitria Buffington on YouTube. Go ahead and follow. I'm trying to get my follows up on YouTube because everything's here on Facebook mostly, but go ahead and subscribe on YouTube as well. What I want to make sure you guys know is that if you have a topic that you want to cover, let me know, reach out to me so we can cover all of that. Follow my professional page, Tenitria Buffington, public figure. So again, you can be abreast to all the things that we're doing. I'm creating a Minding My Mental Health group. There are levels to it. So for people who want to start talking about this thing and have like a community, if you are interested in that, reach out to me, because we're signing people up for those groups. I think it's really necessary that people have a safe place that they can explore this, not necessarily like just the one-on-one counseling, but because again, that stigma is still there. But I want people to have a safe place where they can go and talk to someone who is a professional and work things out in a healthy, safe way. So if you know that's you, reach out to me. We can get that established. Everybody say thank you to Treneisha. She did an amazing
Thank
job.
you guys.
Thank you. I know you were busy, so I appreciate you making time for me, and you have an amazing day. Thank you,
You
guys.
as well. Thank you again.